Hello YouTubers, DIYDan here, and in today's video, I'm going to show you what steps I took in order to change out the front brake pads, rotors, and wear sensors on my 2005 Porsche Cayenne Turbo. If you have a Cayenne, Cayenne S, or Turbo S, the steps should be very similar, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we have to do is raise the vehicle so we can remove the front wheels. The Cayenne has jack points located behind both front wheels as pictured here. Keep in mind that if your car is equipped with air suspension, you must put the car in workshop mode before jacking the vehicle. If you don't know how to put your Cayenne in workshop mode, please click the link here. Once the car is raised, use a 19mm socket to remove the lug nuts. After all the lug nuts have been removed, remove the front wheel and place a jack stand under the vehicle for safety. Next, remove the 13mm nut that holds the brake pad retaining pin in place. Once you have the bolt removed, lubricate the pen to aid in removal. Now, use a long screwdriver or punch to remove the retaining pin from the caliper. Next, disconnect the brake pad wear sensor wiring harness. The brake pad wear sensor wire is held in place by the rubber cap on the brake caliper bleed screw. If you have triggered the brake pad warning light on the dash, the wear sensors will have to be replaced. You should still replace the brake pad wear sensors even if you didn't trigger the dash light, as they're almost impossible to remove without breaking. Once the brake pad wear sensors are disconnected, remove the brake pad tensioning spring, but leave the old brake pads in place. We will use a flathead screwdriver and the old brake pads to move the caliper pistons back to their home position. Remove the old brake pads once the caliper pistons have been returned to home. Remove the T50 Torx bolt that secures the brake rotor to the hub. Before we can remove the caliper, we need to disconnect the two Torx bolts that hold the brake caliper hard lines to the back side of the steering knuckle. For my 2005 Cayenne, the top bolt is a T30 Torx and the bottom is a T40. I'm told that later model year Cayennes use a T40 Torx for both the top and bottom bolts. Before removing the brake caliper, I like to clean it using a mild degreaser that won't be harmful to the paint. Once the brake caliper is clean, use a 21mm socket and the biggest breaker bar you can find. Be warned, these bolts are torqued to 200 foot-pounds at the factory and can be a real pain to remove, especially if you don't have a breaker bar with enough leverage. Once the caliper bolts are removed, use a bungee cord to anchor the caliper to the top control arm. Be careful when handling the brake caliper, as you do not want to damage or bend the hard lines connected to the caliper. Now remove the brake rotor and clean the area of the hub where the brake disc sits. I like to apply anti-seize to the hub to prevent the brake rotor from seizing to it. We are now ready to install our new brake rotor. Since my brake rotors still have plenty of meat on them, I will be reusing them. Install and tighten the T50 Torx bolt that secures the brake rotor to the hub. Next, install the brake caliper. Keep in mind that Porsche states that the caliper bolts are a one-time use only and need to be replaced whenever the caliper has been removed. When installing the brake caliper bolts, I highly recommend you start them by hand to prevent any cross-threading. Remember, these bolts need to be torqued to 200 foot-pounds. Next, I install the upper T30 and lower T40 Torx bolts that hold the brake caliper hard line to the back of the steering knuckle. Before I install my new brake pads, I'm going to clean the gunk and corrosion off my brake pad retaining pin. You can use sandpaper or a wire wheel like I'm doing here to make it look like new again. We are now ready to address the brake pads. Install the brake pad wear sensors in the grooves on the brake pads and be careful not to break them. You shouldn't need to force the wear sensors in place. Now install anti-squill paste on the back of the brake pads. Once you have coated the back of the brake pads with anti-squill paste, we are now ready to install them. The brake pads should drop in with no clearance issues if you move the caliper pistons back far enough. If the brake pads do not fit, try moving the brake caliper pistons further back until the desired clearance is reached. Next, install the brake pad tensioning spring. Now clip the wear sensor wire into the notch on the caliper and plug in the connector. Now install the brake pad retaining pin. The installation will go smoother if you have a helper pushing down on the tensioning spring as you guide the pin in. Next, tighten a 13mm bolt that secures the brake pad retaining pin to the caliper. Finally, we are almost done. Before we install the wheel, hop in the car and pump the brakes a few times. Don't be alarmed if the brake pedal goes directly to the floor, as this is normal. After the second or third pump, the brake pedal should firm up and feel normal again. If the brake pedal feels good, now install the wheel and torque the lug nuts to 118 foot-pounds. Congratulations, you just saved yourself almost $1,000 by doing the front brakes yourself. If you thought this video was helpful, please click the like button. As always, if you have any questions or need help, please post them in the comments section, and I'll do my best to answer them. Good luck!